Hello, my friends. John Peterson from the Arlington Institute, and we're here to talk to you about Transition Talks. This wonderful series that we have here at the Arlington Institute in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just down the road from Washington and Baltimore. We do this every month, and we try to bring a marvelous, provocative speaker from somewhere in the world to come by. And we're doing this in July with our old friend, David Martin. Hi, Dave. How are you, sir?
John, we are living in beautifully interesting times, and I'm doing my best to make them more interesting.
No kidding. I mean, this is crazy world kind of stuff. It's getting harder and harder to know what's real and where it's all going. But both you and I have been in that business for a long time, trying to make sense out of it. And so it's kind of like we've been waiting for this, I guess, or something. It's
well, it feels in a way like we've been prepared for it, John. So I went back and reviewed our multiple interactions in the past, including some of the ones that you have been kind enough to record and put online, and it feels like we were futurists. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we really were back in 2006 when you were here in Berkeley. Last time you were here in Berkeley Springs, or one of the last times you were here in Berkeley Springs. Yeah. Because that was the time when, almost 18 months beforehand, you stood up here and said the thing's going to come unraveled in December of 2007. And, we went public with all of that. And the subprime mortgage situation came unglued, and you were right. And I told this story forever. People keep coming to me saying the Arlington Institute was out in front of this. You were one of the only ones. I said, well, was it Martin's? It's Dave Martin's. Dave Martin's fault. So
yeah, there you go.
So we're looking forward to having you back here with us again. So talk a little bit about what you're going to do. I mean, this is going to be a really special and a good time because there's just amazing things happening in this world, and you've got your finger on the pulse of one of the biggest ones, which is coming downstream.
Yeah, well, John, one of the things that made it possible for us to be as precise as we were about the global financial crisis in 2008 was not necessarily as much, intuitive or prescient awareness as it was reading what the perpetrators are saying in public. They're just saying it in places most people don't look.
Yeah.
And because most people don't look, you can come across as being phenomenally anticipatory with your insight when all you're doing is literate. You're just reading what the criminals are saying. And as I've done through the last now 2 years, now 2.5 years, I guess, with what's going on in the current global paroxysm that we're living through, my point all along is that when you have somebody telling you that they have an intent to do harm,
right.
There's a high probability that they intend to do harm. I mean,
right.
I think, when you and Diane invited me over several years ago to Berkeley Springs for a turkey dinner, the reason I expected turkey is because you told me that you were cooking turkey. So that's kind of why I was going, thinking that I wasn't probably having, seafood flown in from Asia in the middle of Berkeley Springs. But the point is that I think many of us live in a world where we find it difficult to believe, number one, the audacity of evil. And number two, I think we equally find it more audacious that it has the craziness of actually telling us what it's going to do before it does it. Now, what we're going to talk about in July is a lot of fun, because this is going to unravel potentially one of the greatest 100-year myths of America. And the 100-year myth of America is that in the 1930s, in the wake of what we called the Great Depression, which was not a great or a depression, what it was the toddler steps of an economy that only a few years earlier had watched the collapse of regional economies into this crazy thing called the Federal Reserve, and nobody knew what to do with it. And so like an adolescent, drunk driving too early, the country was an adolescent drunk driver and they went off the road, and we call it the Great Depression. We don't point out that during that same time, we have an environmental crisis, then called the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
And if we go back and look at that, we said humans were causing a great environmental crisis, and we called it the Dust Bowl. And what we really had there were family farms all across the country being foreclosed by banks so that large industrial agriculture could take over. Now, I know none of that sounds familiar in this day and age, but a government that's manufacturing a financial crisis and then manufacturing a public health crisis. Then in the 1930s, it was syphilis, John, so that we could all get addicted to penicillin. So we have the trifecta of evil then, and we have the trifecta of evil now. And the great news is they didn't even change the playbook.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to tell us about it beforehand, like you say.
But so what we're going to talk about is the longest admission of the longest broken promise that we have, which was in the 1930s. The Roosevelt administration decided that it wanted to take the role of kind of the paternalistic caretaker of the great American experiment. And what that meant was basically the socialization of the government as the supreme arbiter of what it meant to be healthy, what it meant to be employed, what it meant to own property. And so we had banking acts passed. We had the Social Security Administration put in place. We had a number of large government intrusion programs. And John, one of the questions that I've often asked people is, did Roosevelt, when he put the Social Security Administration in place, know that it was not going to work? If you go back and read the congressional record, if you go back and read history, you find out that the answer to that question, unfortunately, is yes. We knew this probably wasn't going to work, because last time I checked, when politicians see a very large pot of money just sitting there, I don't know, maybe it was the 1930s, maybe it's the 1970s, maybe it's the early 2000s, maybe it's 2011, when government sees a large pot of money that's set aside for future promises, a lot of times they take that money and they leverage it for their own present self-interest. Right. And what happened is, and what we're going to unpack is, that we have an unholy convergence of 1933 to 1937 that's happening, and it's our doorstep. Now, the great news is we know when the Social Security Administration is going to go to zero in its trust account. The best news is that what the government says, which they think it's going to be an early 2030s event, we happen to know a year ago when I first recorded a presentation about this, I said that my aggressive assumption was that we would make it to 2028. But that was before the Biden administration decided to increase benefits paid out of Social Security, which means we're now looking at an entire collapse of our entitlement program by 2027. So we have 5 years to not only diagnose and confirm the diagnosis of the problem, but we have 5 years to create an alternative, or else. And what's the or else? Well, that's why July is important, because I'm going to unpack why the or else matters. And this is an existential threat to what we call the United States of America, but more importantly, it's an existential threat to what we call the global economy. And so July's conversation is going to be one of those where it's, strap in for the roller coaster ride. There is a vertical drop. We happen to know where the drop is. That's good. And this is about seeing if we can make the roller coaster fun instead of terrifying.
Yeah, get prepared for it all. I mean, this is what we're going to highlight, which is really wonderful, is only one of a series of converging things that just guarantee that the next couple of 3 years are just going to be wild and crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way out of it. And so this will be very important for anybody who's either on the live stream or in person, to be able to help to make sense out of what they're going to do and how to deal with this and how to think about it. Because I'm here to tell you that this is one of the big surprises. I wrote the book about big surprises. This is one of the big surprises that if it happens and you haven't thought about it and prepared for it, you're out of time and you're out of money and you're out of ideas, and then you're into fear. And
well,
so
and what a beautiful message to really point directly into, which is the value of foresight is really to be prepared so that fear doesn't have the ability to influence your daily or your long horizon decisions. The fact of the matter is, what we do know is that the systems that we currently call health, the systems we currently call economy, the systems we currently call politics are going to go through a radical transformation, because when you take the liquidity, the financial underpinning of those systems away, by definition, they have to alter. So the issue is, and part of the value of being there in person, just to make sure people find that beautiful spot in the country called Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, part of the value of being there in person is one of the most important messages to take away is the networks that we build today. And I mean that the physical networks, the people that you get to know, the relationships that you have, the connections that you have with people are in fact an inestimable part of that network, which is going to be required for us to weather this storm. So, you know what? Virtual is great, but being in person, meeting people, connecting with people. I know that people are coming from across the country and a few from around the world to Berkeley Springs. I've gotten a lot of emails going, where the heck is Berkeley Springs and what's the closest airport? The fact of the matter is, we have people coming from around the world because they know that the people who are having this conversation are the people they want to have in their network. So, a lot of this has to do with making sure that you know who is going to be part of your future, not just what you anticipate in your future.
That's a great point. You can't do this stuff on your own. You're not going to get through this thing, flying solo. And you need a community, and you need to find the like-minded people. And that's, I think that's the essential kind of dynamic of this transformation to this new world, is to find this new core group that's going to be the basis for the emergent new world. So we're going to have a really good time, and we're really looking forward to having you with us. It'll be fun, and find some place and we'll have dinner and invite everybody over for dinner. On their own. I'm not paying for it. We'll have a really good time, and we hope, and it'll be good. It'll be fun to see you again, David.
It'll be lovely to be there. We are excited to come. And most of all, I want to acknowledge, John, that, we've had the very, very good fortune of knowing each other for a considerable length of time. And across the decades that we've interacted, what I find beautiful about the work that you do at the Arlington Institute is you have always maintained the capacity to have what can be charged or controversial conversations, and do it in a space that has grace, that has elegance, and that encourages people to rise to their highest angels. And I really want to acknowledge that the value of being in this particular session is going to be in the presence of people who don't seek necessarily a unanimity of thought, but actually value the plurality of perspectives to come to a consensus of human endeavor, which includes and embraces multiple perspectives. And I think that what you've done across the decades, John, has been a great service to, I know, my life and a lot of other people. And I'm really, really grateful that we have the chance to connect again.
You're very kind. It'll be great fun. We're looking forward to it. Right down here in the bottom, you'll see all the information that you need in order to make it out here. You'll find out TransitionTALKS.org, and you can find out everything you need. And remember, it's on a live stream, and it's also, so it doesn't make any difference where you are. You can watch this in your pajamas if you want to. And you can also come to our little beautiful resort town, and we'll have a good time. So thank you, David. Looking forward to having you with us.
Always good to see you, John. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take care.